welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Shivani Singh. Canada is expected to see a sharp rise in undocumented immigrants as millions of work permits expire, with nearly half of those affected coming from India. Data from the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada actually shows around 1,53,000 work permits expired by the end of 2025, with another 9,27,000 set to expire in 2026. As work permits expire, holders lose legal status until they secure another visa or transition to permanent residency, with recent government measures making these options more restrictive, especially for temporary workers and international students. Experts estimate that by mid-2026, at least 2 million people in Canada could be living without legal status, with Indians accounting for roughly half of this number. The growth of the undocumented population has already caused social issues in parts of the Greater Toronto region, including in Brampton and Caledon. The encampments have appeared in wooded areas, housing people who are undocumented. In fact, to take this discussion forward, joining us on the broadcast is Manan Dwivedi, Foreign Affairs expert. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast. A very good morning to you. So, when we are looking at this entire issue that's coming to the fore, there is a possibility of 1 million Indians being affected because of the expiry of their legal status in Canada. How do you look at this entire situation that is currently unfolding over there? All right, I believe we have some connection issues with Mr. Dwivedi, but we will try to reconnect with him. For the time being, let's try to understand what this entire issue is. So, there are a handful of people who are actually staying in Canada and they have a residency permits or their work permits. Now, all of these work permits have expired or are set to expire in 2026. For most of them, they have expired by the end of 2025. And then about around 9,27,000 are expected to expire in the first few months of 2026. So, all these people now have to either seek government permits or they have to transition to another visa or also seek permanent residency. That's the point where it gets tricky, because right now Canada has made all these options very restrictive. It becomes difficult for people to actually get different visas or even apply for permanent residency. So, hence this problem is arising that a lot of people are going to illegally stay back in Canada. We are seeing undocumented tents that are being put up across wooded areas in Canada as well, where people are holding themselves, in fact, because their work permits have expired. I believe Mr. Dwivedi is back on the line with us. Sir, we were trying to understand how you look at this entire situation that is currently unfolding in Canada. Over 1 million Indians are said to be affected because of the expiry of these permits. Mr. Dwivedi, if you can hear us. All right, we will try to in fact reconnect. There seems to be an issue with the
Expire. Now, what is of course of special concern to India right now is that nearly half of this number, which is a little above 1 million of these are Indians, with temporary workers and international students most at risk. Now, another very important point to note here is that we've been seeing this sort of an immigration crisis and tightening of visa rules in the US as well, and after that Canada had become a sort of a backup option, a second most desirable location for many Indians, but now we're seeing this sort of a crisis unfold over there as well. Now, what we have right now is data that has been put forward by immigration consultant Kanwar Siraya, who in fact is the one who has come forward with and spoken about this upcoming crisis, and he is the one who has given this data. He has stated that the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, which is the IRCC, shows that around 1,053,000 work permits expired by the end of 2025, with another 927,000 set to expire in 2026. So you can see that this number from the end of 2025 up until the first quarter of 2026 crosses more than a million. In fact, it is a lot closer to 2 million Indians
Right.
who are set to see their work permits expire.
Right.
So these
All
are the
right.
figures that are coming in, Shivani. Yes, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Malvika, for those details. In fact, let me now go across to Mr. Divedi. Mr. Divedi, if you can hear us now, I
Yes, I
believe
can
we
hear you.
are trying to understand how this crisis is actually unfolding over there, because we are seeing a lot of Indians who will be affected by the expiry of these permits, sir.
I would like to opine here that since the Trump's policies as far as immigration is concerned, and as far as the tariffs which have been imposed on Asiatic countries, specifically countries like India and Brazil and other upcoming developing world, there has been a kind of a trend, a kind of a discernible trend in the Western countries, specifically United States of America and in Canada, where we can see that they want a kind of a protectionist and inward-looking system for themselves, both in the context of the domestic policies of these countries and also as far as the immigration policies are concerned. So I think Canada is also seemingly following the lead of President Donald Trump, where they want to withdraw from the world, and it's an isolationist foreign policy. It's an isolationist immigration policy which both the countries in North America seem to be following. Apart from that, I would like to contend, I would like to go to the same source which has been brought in by your channel, that is the IRCC, the Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship of Canada. They have also said in 2025, and I quote the data, around 1,053,000 of the Indians lost their legal status. And by 2026, the number might go to an astronomical keel of 9 million something. So, which is not good for the general health of the India-Canada relationships. Another theme I would like to bring in here happens to be the politics part of it. That is the Niger issue and the manner in which Trudeau blamed the New Delhi denomination that that Indian government is carrying on killings in Canada, and the Khalistan issue, which is intertwined with the entire fundamentals of relationships between India and Canada. All that too might have some kind of a impact, some kind of an influence as far as the general bonhomie between India and Canada is concerned. This is one part. Apart from that, if one can also look into the history a bit, we as journalists and academics tend to ignore the historical part of it because the students and the audience might not be very much interested. But still, if we look into it, 1897 was the year when the first influx of Canadian Punjabi people from India who were working in the British Army, they landed up in places like as Ontario, British Columbia, and in Nova Scotia. They went in there and they started doing jobs like starting small shops there, or getting employed in the timber industry, or in the what do you call the railways, which were coming up initially in Canada during the turn of the 20th century. But after that, there was a clampdown on the Indian immigrants in Canada, and it took us a lot of years. That is in 1967 that the Canadian Immigration Act was passed, which actually opened up completely the entry of Indians into Canada. And one can say that the family connections, and apart from that, the racial clause was for the first time very appreciatively cancelled by the Canadian authorities, and Indians with family connections in Canada, from Punjab particularly, they migrated in large numbers. So I personally feel that when we talk about India and Canada, then what comes to my mind happens to be the DDLJ's entire crowd, wherein people hobnob with each other from Canada, and the sarso agriculture fields in Punjab, and how the male protagonist goes in and fools a group of people as far
Right.
as the love interest is concerned. So I
Right.
think that cultural imagery and that cultural bonhomie might take a beating if this kind of a thing continues
Okay.
as far as the Indian students' entry into Canada is concerned.
Right.
I would like to say that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dwivedi, for joining us on the broadcast.